That's how we do it.
This project begins by breaking down some sheets of plywood with my table saw and circular saw. We all know how that goes, so let's just rush through it as fast as possible. I begin assembly with the side and bottom pieces by applying glue to the butt joint and holding everything in place with some 2-inch me-nails. I come back with my square and drill pilot holes for a whack of 2-inch screws. A clamp comes in handy for making stubborn pieces think they're square. The same process is repeated for the other side panel of the cart. I move the unit to the ground where I apply glue along the back edges and fasten the panel in place with more fix this build that nails. After nailing, more pilot holes and 2-inch screws are driven in to hold everything together permanently. I move the unit back to my workbench and apply glue to the edges of the front stretcher piece. This is held in place with more brad nails and followed up by more 2-inch screws. I then move it upside down back to the ground to finish off driving in 2-inch screws to the bottom of the front stretcher. Over at my homemade CNC, I made a simple jig for my plunge router to follow when cutting the recesses out from both sides. If you don't have a homemade CNC, you can download a free set of plans on my website, DIYbuilds.ca. The piece is sanded to remove the fuzzies, and the sides and backs are cut off, leaving a perfect reference edge. I attach a fence to the top of the jig with some screws and nail it in place over my center mark on the inside of the unit. I have a follower bit set up in my plunge router to match the jig walls as I plunge down a 1/4 inch at a time until I'm about 1/8 of an inch from breaking through to the other side. I verify the fit of the pipe and flip the fence around to cut the mirror image on the opposite side. One side gets a through hole to allow the pipe to slide in place. I then plane to thickness some 1x material to the same thickness of the black pipe diameter. I then rip several strips from this piece and cut them at the miter saw to desired length. These are the spacers between the top and bottom sheets of plywood. I begin assembly of the flip top by marking the center and measuring the diameter of the pipe. I divide this in half and scribe marks on either side of my center line. I apply glue to the first spacer piece, which will butt up against the pipe and hold everything in place with a whole whack of 2-inch brad nails. The pipe is laid in place and the opposite side spacer can be secured. After that, all other spacer pieces are glued and nailed down. As you can see, both ends have about a 1-inch gap. This is to allow for the locking bars to engage. I place the other side plywood piece on top and mark out where the brad nails will need to go, as I would be shooting blind otherwise. The top is installed after laying down a bucket of glue and a marathon of nailing can begin. I then add several clamps along the edges for good measure to dry overnight. At the router table, I have a chamfer bit set to cut 2 chamfers in 2 pieces of wood the same thickness as the pipe. These will be the locking bars, and the chamfer helps guide the flip top into place. I clamp a piece of 3/4 inch plywood down and glue the locking bar onto the back panel and nail it down. The same is done with the front door, but the piece is about 1 inch shorter to give some swing space on either side. I then use an angle grinder to cut a piece of piano hinge and deburr it with a file. With the cart on its back, I slip the flip top onto the rear locking bar and insert the pipe in the middle. I then lay the front door in place and clamp it down. I flip the cart on its side so I can install the hinge with the help of a self-centering drill bit and some 3/4 inch screws. I now flipped the cart upside down to install the locking casters. I tried to space the wheels away from the edge while still giving access to the lock levers. I flip the cart right side up, open the door, and give the mechanism a try. And it doesn't work.
So, here's the center line. Here's the direction it can slide to flip. There's the permanent wall. And there's the door. This part should be over here. And it's the same on the other side.
So back at my handy jig, I make sure to have it the right way around and hog out some more material on both sides. My special little helper makes sure the shop stays looking great. Okay, round 2. I move the flip top in place and insert the pipe. I close the front door and can begin installing the latches, which will hold the door closed when not flipping surfaces. Some clamps were needed for warped plywood persuasion. I rate the cart for the last time and give the flip top a trial run. It works great. I found out those locking casters are not optional, as the cart will want to run away from you without them. The last step was to mount my thickness planer and in-feed and out-feed supports. I marked the location for the 4 lag bolts and drilled pilot holes for them. I used the lag bolts to cut the threads before final assembly, as this makes driving in the bolts with a ratchet way easier. The bed is moved into place and held down with 4 L brackets. With that, the project is complete. And as we watch the cart in action, you might be wondering why I designed it this way. I wanted a place to have my thickness planer set up, but I also wanted an empty tabletop space to use if my assembly table is full. With that said, this cart is more than strong enough to accommodate multiple tools at once, as it's very robust and built to last.
Five points.